Welcome to TV Africa News. Hope you had a beautiful day. This is Africa Today. My name is Nahabe Kajur, but first are the headlines. President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni commissions locally manufactured armored military vehicle. Uganda receives 10 million doses of polio vaccines. And government warns protesters over escalation. And in our sports today, Uganda Under-20 women's national team embark on preparations for CECAFA Championship. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. We start with one of our top stories. Now, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni has commissioned the latest infantry fighting vehicle, code-named Chui, designed and manufactured in Uganda by the UPDF. Now, the ceremony was held at State House in Entebbe, where the vehicle was unveiled and was attended by the Commander, Land Forces, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. We have more on this report. While commissioning the military vehicles, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni said that he was happy that the army is towing this line, adding that Uganda spends over $550 million each year on importing vehicles from Japan and Europe. Museveni added that all the money, about $500 million, which is got from selling coffee, goes back to Europe through the importation of vehicles, and he said must stop. UPDF Motorized Infantry is a specialized brigade under the Land Forces with infantry fighting vehicles as its basic equipment. The motorized infantry's role is to provide its technical and combat capabilities of its equipment to deliver firepower, shock action, armor protection, mobility, and maneuverability during combat. The brigade is headquartered in Nakasongola district, 120 kilometers north of capital city on Kampala-Gulu Highway. Uganda started manufacturing the vehicles after the manufacturing company for the Mambas and Buffaloes in South Africa, which the Ugandan army fancied for use, was now out of business, and new spare parts were nowhere to be got on the market. The UPDF consequently devised means of rebuilding the vehicles and make them armored, leading to manufacture of Nyoka. Moving on, Uganda on Tuesday received a total of 10,997,500 doses of the novel oral polio vaccine to immunize children under 5. Now, this was confirmed by Emmanuel Ainebiona, the Senior Public Relations Officer at the Ministry of Health. Our reporter has more.
According to Emmanuel Ainebiona, the Senior Public Relations Officer at the Ministry of Health, Uganda received 10,997,500 doses of the novel oral polio vaccine, targeting type 2 polio virus that will be used to immunize 8,791,710 children under 5. Ainebiona added that the vaccines will be stored at the national medical stores and used in the mass door-to-door polio vaccination campaign slated for November and early December 2021. The development comes months after Uganda confirmed the outbreak of polio in the country, following confirmation of positive laboratory tests from environmental samples in Kampala. It should be remembered that in August 2020, Uganda was certified by the World Health Organization as a polio-free country. However, in August, the Health Ministry confirmed that the Uganda Virus Research Institute had confirmed a circulating vaccine-derived polio virus type 2 after collecting samples from sewage plants in Bugolobi and Lubigi. The ministry blamed the resurgence on reduced immunization rates during the COVID-19 pandemic and cross-border movements among neighboring countries from countries affected by the outbreak. Polio is a viral disease that is transmitted from one person to another, mainly through fecal-oral route or less frequently through contaminated water or food and multiplies inside the intestines.
Moving on in our top stories, the First Lady Janet Museveni has called for involvement of children and youth in the campaign against corruption, which is one of the biggest challenges faced by government today.
According to Ms. Museveni, who doubles as the Sports and Education Minister, children and youth, who make 75% of Uganda's population, should be allowed to participate actively in citizen social accountability because they are susceptible to misinformation and speculation. Ms. Museveni, who was last November named national champion for the Ambassadors of Integrity, said that she had always been guiding her technical people in the Ministry of Education and Sports, that it is important for all of them to get to know what is happening in the ministry. She added that it is important for them to know what they intend to do, why they intend to do it, when they plan to do it, and how they shall do it, saying that the approach is important because perceived corruption is sometimes a result of lack of transparency with the information they have or the work they are doing. According to her, the fight against corruption has been the commitment of the National Resistance Movement government from 1986. The First Lady said this after the Inspector General of Government, Betty Kamya, on Monday presented to the Speaker of Parliament, Jacob Bolanya, a National Integrity Survey report, which indicated Uganda loses over 20 trillion shillings per year to corruption. Mrs. Museveni was speaking during the launch of the 2021 anti-corruption campaign at State House Entebbe under the theme Promoting Active Citizen Participation in Social Accountability.
Well, thank you so much, your reporter. We take a quick break. We shall come back with the international news. Welcome back for the break. You're still watching TV Africa, the Bright to Know. Moving on, in our international news today, Kenya has seen increased investment in infrastructure since the formation of developed units of government in 2013. Now, to achieve this infrastructure milestone, contractors needed high-end equipment that would enable them deliver on the set deadlines for completion of projects. Our reporter has more.
Quip Bank Trust Limited has been at the forefront in providing the much-needed equipment for the constructions, making it easy for contractors to meet their completion timeframes for the infrastructure projects. Bertha Muvati, director of Quip Bank, said that they have worked and partnered with Narok County to help in construction of dams and have worked with Bomet County in terms of helping them with their road networks. Kenya is currently undertaking mega infrastructure projects in an effort to spur economic growth while also maintain its spot as the region's economic giant. Nairobi Expressway, which is already changing the capital, is expected to be completed in 2022. Quip Bank Trust is now partnering with a South African company and another in India to help supply the much-needed high-end equipment to meet the rising demand due to the ongoing projects. With improved infrastructure, Kenya stands to attract more foreign investment and also improve its economic stature in Africa.
Moving on in our international news, the Sudanese government warned pro-military and civilian supporters against any escalation on Monday in Khartoum after the dispersal of a demonstration calling for his downfall, a new episode in the worst crisis of the post-Bashir era, according to the Prime Minister. Our reporter has more. The Office of Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok announced the creation of a crisis cell to try to lower tensions in Sudan, one of the poorest countries in the world according to the UN, and which has been trying for 2 years to lead a difficult transition. This cell is composed of 2 senior army officers and 4 representatives of the demonstrators, like the transitional authorities, jointly led by military and civilians, say the government source to AFP. 2 of the 4 representatives of the protesters are pro-civilian, coming from the revolt that ended in 2019, the 30-year dictatorship of Omar al-Bashir, while the other 2 come from a seditious faction of this bloc that now wants to hand over power to the military. Even as the cabinet was making these decisions, police were tear-gassing pro-military protesters gathered outside its headquarters, chanting "Down with Hamdok" on the third day of a show of force by supporters of military rule. The government discussed the situation in the East at its meeting on Monday, promising to find fair solutions and put an end to economic abandonment of the resource-rich but infrastructure-starved region, according to a statement. Moving on, volunteers working with the Congolese Health Ministry dressed in protective clothes on Monday disinfected the house of a man suspected of dying from Ebola in Kasabinyole, a neighborhood in Beni. Our reporter has more.
The 36-year-old's body was removed and covered while distraught relatives looked on and begged to see him one more time. But the volunteers had to explain to them it would not be possible. They took samples from the victim that will be analyzed to determine if he was infected with Ebola. Authorities said on Monday that 5 confirmed cases of Ebola have been registered in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where at least 3 people died this month since the new outbreak was declared. The new outbreak that started October 8th comes after a devastating epidemic that began in 2018 when the disease killed more than 2,020 people in the conflict-ridden region, and 5 months after the country declared it was free from the virus. The World Health Organization started vaccinating people against the virus last week.
Away from that, the UN Secretary General Antonio called on Monday on authorities in Eswatini to respect the rights of children after schools were closed and a new wave of protests against Africa's last absolute monarchy was suppressed. Guterres said in a statement that he was following with concern the ongoing developments in Eswatini, including the recent deployment of armed security forces at various schools, reports of excessive use of force in response to student demonstrations, and the indefinite closure of schools. The statement added that those developments adversely affect children and young people, and the UN chief urged the government to ensure that security forces act in conformity with relevant international human rights standards, including the UN Convention of the Rights of the Children. Guterres condemned all the acts of violence and urged all parties and the media to refrain from disinformation, hate speech, and incitement to violence. Pupils and students in the tiny landlocked nation formerly known as Switzerland have been protesting for a number of weeks, boycotting lessons and calling for free schooling as well as end to the regime under King Swati. Authorities said on Saturday that schools had been shut indefinitely a day after the country shut down the internet for 2 hours as pro-democracy marchers headed to the capital. At least 28 people have died as police clashed with protesters in some of the worst unrest in the southern African country's history. Well, thank you so much, our reporter. Africa Today takes a quick break. We shall come back with the business news. Africa Today, welcome back from the break. Let's turn your attention to our business news today. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip met with his counterpart in Togo on Tuesday as part of his 3-leg Africa trip. They met in Lome for a day of discussions. Our reporter has more.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's visit followed a meeting with Angolan President João Lourenço on Monday in Luanda at the start of the trip. The next and final stop for Erdogan will be Nigeria. But in Lome, several high-level exchanges planned took place between the heads of state, as well as working sessions between different delegations. It was notably a question of cooperation, prospects for partnership, and signing of agreements, including the financing of the industrial platform of Adet Corp, located at the northern exit of Lome. In less than a year, several Togolese ministers, including Foreign Affairs, Security and the Armed Forces, have successively visited Ankara. In Turkey's trade balance, Africa does not weigh very heavily, less than 10% of its exports, compared to 56% to Europe and 26% to Asia. But since 2003, the volume of trade between Turkey and Africa has increased fivefold, from $5 to $25 billion. Turkish investments on the continent have also exploded, amounting to $6.5 billion according to official figures. Beyond President Erdogan's visit, the presidents of Burkina Faso, Roch Marc Christian Kabore, and Liberia, George Weah, also visited the Togolese capital on Tuesday. They joined in discussions later with President Gnassingbé Bey.
Away from business, in our health news today, Burundi, one of the last countries in the world to inoculate its people against COVID-19, received its first batch of vaccines on Thursday after a major about turn by the government. Now, the health minister said on Twitter on Wednesday that vaccinations against COVID-19 begin next week if all goes well. Take a look at the story. The East African country, whose leaders had previously downplayed the severity of coronavirus pandemic, took delivery of 500,000 donated doses of China's Sinopharm vaccine at a ceremony in the economic capital, Bujumbura. Burundi's change of heart leaves the largely closed-off nation of Eritrea as the only African country that has yet to launch vaccination campaigns, while North Korea insists it has no cases of the disease and has rejected any vaccines. Burundi only rarely makes public announcements about COVID infection data, but according to the latest figures reported to the World Health Organization, it has recorded 19,441 confirmed cases with 14 deaths. 23-year-old entrepreneur Gracia Iteka thought that the vaccine will be a good thing in the country amidst the pandemic. Agathon Rwasa, leader of the opposition National Congress for Liberty, called on the government to intensify an awareness campaign about COVID and said it should ensure enough supplies of the vaccine. Last year, President Evariste Ndayishimiye declared the coronavirus Burundi's biggest enemy. Previously, Ndayishimiye and his predecessor, Pierre Nkurunziza, who died suddenly in June 2020, amid speculation he had contracted COVID, had minimized the gravity of the pandemic, saying God had spared Burundi from its ravages. In Africa Today Sports, Uganda Under-20 Women's National Team will shift focus to the regional tournament CECAFA Under-20 Women's Championship after a good start in the qualifiers for the FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup. We have more on this report.
Uganda Under-20 Women's National Team focus has now shifted to CECAFA, where Uganda is the host. The tournament will be played between 28th October to 10th November at the Federation for Uganda Football Association Technical Center in Njeru. The team enters camp today and coach Ayubu Khalifa Chiyinji has summoned a provisional squad of 30 players. Majority of the players that were in the squad which faced Kenya at the start of this month have been maintained. However, there are new faces, including goalkeeper Dana Natkunda, who plays at Kawempe Muslim Ladies Football Club. The others include Asiana Chibuka, who has been part of the Crested Cranes team that played at COSAFA Women's Championships in South Africa and now preparing to face Ethiopia in the Africa Women Cup of Nations. Constance Nelima of Shikataka Football Club, Olivia Babiri of Lady Doves Football Clubs, and Aisha Namkwaya of Dynamic Senior Secondary School Jeza Women Football Club are the other new faces on the team. King expects to use the tournament as precursor for the FIFA Under-20 Women's Cup matches against South Africa slated for December.
Well, thank you so much for being a loyal audience. From when we started from, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We shall keep updating you. It is TV Africa, the right to know.